A black girl quietly walked into Brooklyn High School. Her name was Maya Johnson, and she was here to complete her senior year in silence, blending invisibly among the crowded hallways. But before Maya could memorize the locker combination, Ashley Mitchell, a white girl with porcelain skin and a heart as cold as ice, decided that Maya would be the perfect target for bullying. It started with mocking laughs, followed by malicious whispers, and then intentional acts of humiliation in front of everyone. When Ashley smiled confidently, thinking she was about to deliver the final performance, the whole school gathered, phones ready to record, waiting for the moment when Maya would break. But there was one thing that none of them knew about Maya Johnson. She wasn't just some quiet new girl from Chicago. They had unwittingly picked a fight with a trained fighter, someone who had spent her entire childhood honing discipline and self-control in her father's gym. And today, Maya was going to show them all exactly what that meant. The yellow bus screeched to a halt in front of Brooklyn High School, its doors swinging open to release a flood of chattering students. Maya Johnson remained seated, her eyes fixed on the imposing red brick building through the smudged window. She took a deep breath, tightening her grip on her backpack straps. 6 months earlier, Chicago. The rhythmic sound of fists hitting punching bags echoed through her father's gym. 16-year-old Maya moved with precision, her body flowing through combat forms with a grace that belied her strength. "Control your power, Maya." Her father's voice resonated across the room. "True strength isn't about how hard you hit. It's about knowing when not to." Present day. Maya was the last to step off the bus, her eyes downcast as she navigated through clusters of students. As a black girl transferring to a predominantly white school, she knew what awaited her. The stares, the whispers, the unspoken questions that followed her like shadows. Just get through senior year, she reminded herself. Stay invisible. Leave no trace. The hallways of Brooklyn High were a maze of blue lockers and fluorescent lights, the air thick with perfume, deodorant, and ambition. Maya moved cautiously, her shoulders slightly hunched as if trying to occupy less space. Despite her efforts, she caught glimpses of curious glances, some merely inquisitive, others tinged with something colder. The corridor suddenly fell silent, conversations dying mid-sentence. Students parted like water around a stone, and Maya felt the shift in atmosphere before she saw its cause. Ashley Mitchell walked down the hallway like she owned every tile beneath her expensive shoes. Her blonde hair cascaded in perfect curls over her shoulders, and her designer-plaid dress accentuated her slim frame. Everything about her radiated a confidence so intense it bordered on arrogance. Flanking her were her loyal lieutenants, Brianna with fiery red hair and calculating eyes that missed nothing, and Courtney with dark brown hair and a quiet demeanor that concealed her efficiency as Ashley's information gatherer. Behind them walked Zach Mitchell, Ashley's brother and the school's football star, his jersey number 12 visible even from a distance. Beside him, lanky Luke Rodriguez moved with the restless energy of someone always looking for trouble. They weren't just popular students. They were the uncrowned royalty of Brooklyn High, the architects of its invisible social hierarchy. Maya made the mistake of looking up at precisely the wrong moment, her eyes accidentally meeting Ashley's icy blue gaze. The white girl's expression shifted, her perfectly glossed lips curling into something between a smile and a sneer. It lasted only a second, but in that brief moment, Maya understood the message perfectly. You don't belong here. Maya quickly looked down, focusing on her locker combination with unnecessary intensity. Her fingers trembled slightly as she dialed the numbers, 24, 16, 32. The hallway had resumed its normal volume, but Maya could feel Ashley's lingering assessment like a cold draft on her neck. She had transferred schools enough times to recognize the signs. Ashley Mitchell had just marked her as a target. As Maya slipped into her first class, choosing a desk in the far corner, she kept her face carefully neutral. But beneath her calm exterior, a familiar weight settled in her chest. She had hoped this school would be different, that for once, she could complete a year without drawing attention. The classroom filled quickly, students claiming their territories with practiced ease. Maya kept her eyes on her notebook, a blank page waiting for notes she wasn't sure she'd be able to focus on taking. When Ashley walked in with Brianna, their laughter cutting through the pre-class chatter, Maya didn't need to look up to know they had deliberately chosen seats nearby. "Did you see her shoes?" Ashley's voice, carefully calibrated to sound like a whisper while carrying perfectly to Maya's ears. "I guess that's what passes for fashion in Chicago." Brianna's responding giggle felt like sandpaper against Maya's skin. "Do you think she even knows how to string a sentence together?" Maya's hand tightened around her pencil, but her expression remained unchanged. She had learned long ago that reactions only fed the fire. Silence was her shield, invisibility her armor. She would endure this year as she had endured others, quietly, with dignity, leaving no ripples in her wake. But as the teacher called the class to order, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that Brooklyn High would test her resolve in ways she hadn't anticipated. The weight of Ashley's calculating stares told her that her carefully constructed walls of silence might not be enough this time. What none of them knew, what none of them could possibly suspect, was that the quiet new girl from Chicago had spent her entire childhood at her father's gym, learning not just how to fight, but when to fight. Maya Johnson had mastered the art of self-control through years of discipline, and that control was about to be tested in ways she never imagined. The first class dragged on interminably. Maya kept her eyes fixed on her notebook, filling it with meticulous notes while ignoring the occasional sharp glance from Ashley. Despite her focus on the teacher's words, Maya couldn't help but notice how students kept stealing glances at her, not with the usual curiosity reserved for new arrivals, but with a strange anticipation, as if waiting for something to happen. When the bell finally rang, Maya gathered her books with deliberate slowness, allowing the classroom to empty before she stood. As she stepped into the hallway, the whispers began. "That's her, the new girl from Chicago. God, what is she wearing? Ashley's already got her sights on her." The whispers weren't accidental. They were perfectly calibrated to reach her ears while maintaining plausible deniability. Maya recognized the tactic immediately. It was the first phase of a familiar pattern, testing boundaries, gauging reactions, preparing for escalation. "Just keep walking. Don't engage. Don't give them anything." Maya repeated her mantra silently as she navigated to her next class, her face a careful mask of indifference. Inside, though, her heart hammered against her ribs, and memories threatened to surface. Memories of another school, another group of tormentors, another moment when her carefully constructed control had shattered with devastating consequences. By lunchtime, the whispers had grown louder, more deliberate. Maya entered the cafeteria and immediately felt dozens of eyes tracking her movement. The room was a perfect microcosm of the school's social hierarchy. The central tables occupied by Ashley and her court, surrounded by concentric circles of decreasing social status. Maya headed directly for the furthest corner, a table that might as well have had social exile painted across it. She unpacked her lunch methodically, focusing on the simple task to ground herself. The cafeteria's noise level suddenly dropped, and Maya didn't need to look up to know what was happening. She could feel Ashley's approach like a change in atmospheric pressure. "You're looking a bit lonely over here." Ashley's voice dripped with false concern. "Why sit all the way in this corner? Don't you want friends?" Maya finally looked up, meeting Ashley's eyes with a steady gaze that revealed nothing of her inner turmoil. Behind Ashley stood Brianna and Courtney, their expressions a mixture of anticipation and amusement. Several nearby tables had fallen silent, students turning to watch the interaction with barely concealed interest. "I like the quiet," Maya replied, her voice soft but clear. Something flickered in Ashley's eyes, surprise, perhaps, that Maya had spoken at all. It disappeared quickly, replaced by calculated amusement. "Well, we wouldn't want you to be thirsty," Ashley said, her lips curving into a smile that never reached her eyes. Before Maya could react, Ashley tilted the large cup in her hand. Dark red juice cascaded over Maya's tray, staining her sandwich, soaking her notebook, and splashing onto the pristine white shirt she'd chosen so carefully that morning. "Oops," Ashley's voice rang with mock concern. I'm so clumsy. I'm so sorry. The cafeteria erupted in laughter, some genuine, some nervous, some forced from those who knew better than to remain silent when Ashley expected appreciation for her performance. Maya sat perfectly still, feeling the cold liquid seeping through her shirt. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, and for a brief moment, she felt her control slipping, felt her muscles tensing, preparing for a response her father had spent years teaching her to master. The first move is rarely the right move, Maya. Breathe, assess, choose. Her father's words echoed in her mind. Maya took a slow, deliberate breath, then another. With movements so controlled they appeared almost mechanical, Maya stood up. She gathered her soaked tray, walked to the trash can, and disposed of her ruined lunch. The cafeteria had fallen into an eerie silence, all eyes following her methodical movements. When she returned to collect her backpack, she finally looked at Ashley again. Their eyes met, and something in Maya's gaze, something cold, composed, and utterly unflinching, made Ashley take an involuntary step back. It wasn't anger or fear that Ashley saw in those eyes. It was something far more unsettling, absolute, unwavering control. Without a word, Maya shouldered her backpack and walked out of the cafeteria, her footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. Behind her, the whispers resumed, but with a different tone. Did you see that? She didn't even react. What's wrong with her? Ashley stood frozen, juice cup still in hand, experiencing something unfamiliar crawling beneath her skin. It took her a moment to recognize it as uncertainty. People reacted to her provocations. They cried, they yelled, they begged, they ran. They didn't just absorb it like Maya had done, with that unervingly calm stare. What a freak, Brianna offered, trying to break the strange tension. Totally, Ashley agreed, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. She returned to her table, surrounded by her usual admirers, yet something had shifted. She could feel it in the way students glanced at her, then at the cafeteria doors where Maya had exited. For the first time in her reign at Brooklyn High, Ashley Mitchell felt something dangerous creeping into her carefully constructed world. Doubt. In the empty bathroom, Maya finally allowed her hands to shake as she dabbed at her stained shirt with damp paper towels. Her reflection stared back at her, composed on the surface, but with a storm brewing in her eyes. Just get through the year, she whispered to herself. Just stay invisible. But as the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch period, Maya knew with growing certainty that invisibility was no longer an option. Ashley Mitchell had made sure of that. The days that followed transformed Brooklyn High into a carefully orchestrated battleground. Ashley Mitchell, rattled by Maya's unnerving composure in the cafeteria, escalated her campaign with the precision of a general deploying troops. What had begun as whispers and isolated incidents evolved into a coordinated assault on Maya's existence at the school. In English class, Ashley and Brianna positioned themselves directly behind Maya, their whispers a constant soundtrack. I heard she got kicked out of her last school for being crazy. My cousin knows someone from Chicago who says she's from the worst neighborhood. Do you think she even understands what we're reading? They probably don't have books where she's from. Maya kept her eyes on her copy of The Great Gatsby, her finger tracing each line methodically, absorbing Fitzgerald's words while filtering out the poisonous ones directed at her. Inside, though, a quiet storm was building. Not just anger, but a deep exhaustion that came from constantly maintaining her walls. Chicago, 2 years earlier. You broke her collarbone, Maya. Her father's voice wasn't angry, just deeply concerned as they sat in the principal's office. That's not what I taught you. She wouldn't stop, Dad. 15-year-old Maya stared at her hands, still unable to believe what they had done. Every day for months, she followed me into the bathroom and started pulling my hair, and I just reacted. The technique was perfect, Marcus Johnson said quietly. The judgment wasn't. Present day. The memory faded as Maya closed her book, the bell signaling the end of class. She gathered her things with measured movements, hyper-aware of Ashley's eyes, tracking her every move. In the hallways, Maya found her locker defaced with scrawled words. Nothing overtly threatening, nothing that would trigger administrative intervention, but messages designed to make her feel unwelcome. "Go back to Chicago" was the kindest among them. Maya simply wiped the marker away with disinfectant wipes she now carried in her backpack, her face betraying nothing of the tightness building in her chest. Physical education became the most dangerous territory. The class offered Ashley's brother Zach and his friend Luke the perfect opportunity to join the campaign against Maya. The gym teacher's laissez-faire approach to supervision created an environment where accidents could happen with impunity. During volleyball, spikes mysteriously found their way toward Maya's face. During laps, shoulders collided with hers at blind corners. Each incident was followed by exaggerated apologies that fooled no one. "Sorry, didn't see you there," Zach would say, his smile never reaching his eyes, while Luke snickered beside him. Maya absorbed each impact, each accident, with the same unsettling calm that had begun to visibly unnerve her tormentors. She'd been trained to take hits far harder than these, to maintain balance when opponents twice her size try to throw her off center. These clumsy attempts barely registered physically, though emotionally, the constant vigilance was taking its toll. After a particularly brutal gym class where Luke had accidentally tripped her during relay races, Maya found herself alone in the locker room, changing quickly before the other girls returned. Her side ached where she'd hit the floor, and she lifted her shirt slightly to examine the bruise forming along her ribs. "That looks painful." Maya turned sharply to find Ashley leaning against the lockers, arms crossed, watching her with an expression that mixed curiosity with something else, frustration, perhaps. "It's nothing," Maya said, lowering her shirt and continuing to pack her gym clothes. "You know, most people would have complained by now," Ashley said, moving closer. "Gone crying to the principal, called their parents, made a scene." She tilted her head, studying Maya like a puzzling math problem. "Why haven't you?" For a moment, Maya considered ignoring the question. But something in Ashley's tone, a genuine confusion beneath the hostility, made her respond. "Would it change anything if I did?" The question hung in the air between them. Ashley's eyes narrowed slightly. "You think you're better than us, don't you? With your silent treatment and your calm little act." Ashley's voice had lost its usual performative quality. Now it carried a raw edge. "Nobody just takes what you've taken without breaking. Nobody." Maya zipped her bag closed and faced Ashley directly. "I'm not trying to be better than anyone. I just want to graduate and move on." "Well, that's not how it works here," Ashley snapped. "At Brooklyn High, you don't get to decide how things go." "I do." Maya shouldered her bag, a weariness settling over her that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. "Why does it matter so much to you? What did I ever do to you, Ashley?" The question seemed to catch Ashley off guard. For a brief moment, something vulnerable flickered across her face. Confusion, perhaps even shame, before her features hardened again. "You exist," she said simply, "and you exist like nothing I do matters." Maya held Ashley's gaze for a long moment, seeing beyond the cruelty to something more fragile beneath. Then, without another word, she walked past her toward the door. "This isn't over, Maya," Ashley called after her. "Not even close." Maya paused at the door. "I know," she said quietly, without turning around. That afternoon, the whispers in the hallway had a different quality, more urgent, more excited. Maya caught fragments as she moved between classes. After school, behind the gym, Ashley's gonna finally. By the time Maya reached her locker at the end of the day, she wasn't surprised to find a note taped to it, the handwriting precise and deliberate. After school, behind the gym, be there if you don't want to be called a coward forever. Ashley Mitchell. Students lingered nearby, watching for her reaction with poorly disguised interest. Maya read the note twice, then carefully folded it and placed it in her pocket. Her heart rate increased slightly, but her breathing remained steady. This was the moment she had been dreading since her first day. The moment when silence and avoidance would no longer be viable strategies. Ashley had forced a public confrontation, one that Maya couldn't walk away from without cementing her position as a victim in the school's hierarchy. As if summoned by her thoughts, Ashley appeared at the end of the hallway, flanked by her usual entourage. The crowd parted for them automatically, conditioned by years of social training. Ashley's eyes found Maya's across the distance, her expression a challenge wrapped in absolute certainty. "I hope you'll show up, Maya," Ashley called, her voice carrying down the suddenly silent hallway. "I'm tired of your pathetic, fake, tough girl act. It's time you learned your place at Brooklyn High." She paused, her smile sharpening. "Unless, of course, you're too scared." The gathered students held their collective breath, waiting for Maya's response. In that moment, Maya felt a strange calm settle over her. Not the forced calm of restraint, but something deeper, a clarity that came from recognizing an inevitable crossroads. "I'll be there," she said, her voice quiet but carrying in the silence. Something flickered in Ashley's eyes, surprise, perhaps even a flash of uncertainty, before she masked it with a smirk. "Good. Don't disappoint me." As Ashley and her group walked away, the hallway erupted in excited murmurs. Maya closed her locker slowly, her mind already shifting from avoidance to preparation. She had promised her father after the incident in Chicago that she would never lose control again, that she would find peaceful resolutions to conflict. But as she walked through the school's main doors into the afternoon sunlight, Maya knew that some confrontations couldn't be avoided, only faced with as much dignity and restraint as possible. She pulled out her phone and texted her father. "I might be late coming home today. There's something I need to handle." The reply came almost immediately. "Be careful, Maya. Remember who you are." Maya slipped the phone back in her pocket, her father's words echoing in her mind as she walked toward the gym, toward a confrontation that would either break her promise to him or redefine what that promise meant. Behind the school, students were already gathering, drawn by the irresistible magnetism of impending conflict. Maya took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and walked forward to meet whatever came next. The gray afternoon sky hung heavy over Brooklyn High's athletic fields, as if the weather itself sensed the weight of what was about to unfold. Maya approached the gathering crowd behind the gym, her footsteps measured and deliberate on the patchy grass. About 20 students had already assembled, their excited whispers falling silent as they noticed her arrival. At the center of the semicircle stood Ashley Mitchell, arms crossed over her chest, chin tilted upward in practiced arrogance. Behind her, like loyal sentries, stood Brianna and Courtney, with Zach and Luke flanking them in a display of physical intimidation. The formation was deliberate, a visual reminder of the power structure Maya was challenging. Maya stopped several feet away from Ashley, her face betraying nothing of the rapid calculations running through her mind. She scanned the area quickly, noting possible escape routes, obstacles, the firmness of the ground beneath her feet, all automatic assessments ingrained through years of training. "I thought you might run away," Ashley called out, her voice carrying across the open space. "But I'm glad you showed up. It's time everyone sees what happens when someone forgets their place at this school." A few nervous laughs rippled through the crowd. Maya remained silent, her gaze steady on Ashley's face. The silence seemed to unnerve Ashley more than any response could have. "What's wrong, Maya? Cat got your tongue." Ashley stepped forward, closing the distance between them. "Or are you finally realizing you're in over your head?" Maya took a slow, centering breath before speaking. "Ashley, you don't want to do this." It wasn't a plea. It was a warning, delivered with such quiet certainty that several onlookers exchanged uneasy glances. Ashley's smile faltered momentarily before returning with forced brightness. "Oh, I'm so scared," she mocked, glancing back at her friends for affirmation. "Did you hear that? The quiet girl from Chicago is threatening me now." She turned to Zach with a subtle nod. The football player stepped forward, his imposing frame designed to intimidate. He smirked, cracking his knuckles in a theatrical display. "Last chance to apologize, Maya," Ashley said. "Admit you've been disrespectful, promise to know your place from now on, and maybe, just maybe, we'll let this go." Maya's expression didn't change. "I have nothing to apologize for." Ashley's face hardened. Wrong answer. She stepped back, giving Zach an imperceptible signal. The football player moved forward with the confidence of someone who had never faced meaningful resistance. He reached out to shove Maya's shoulder, a simple intimidation tactic he'd employed countless times before. What happened next occurred so quickly that many onlookers would later disagree about the exact sequence of events. Maya shifted slightly to her right, a movement so subtle it barely registered, and Zach's hand met empty air where her shoulder had been. In the same fluid motion, Maya grasped his extended wrist, pivoted her body, and used his own momentum to pull him forward and off balance. A simple redirection of force, applied with precise timing. Zach stumbled, his own weight and forward motion working against him. Before he could recover, Maya executed a perfect foot sweep, removing his last point of stability. The star quarterback of Brooklyn High crashed to the ground with a heavy thud that seemed to reverberate across the stunned silence of the gathered crowd. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The collective shock was palpable as students struggled to process what they had just witnessed. Zach Mitchell, athletic, powerful, untouchable Zach, was on the ground, looking up with bewildered eyes at the girl who had put him there with seemingly no effort. Luke, reacting on instinct rather than judgment, lunged forward with an angry shout. Maya pivoted again, this time catching his outstretched arm and executing a textbook joint lock. Luke's momentum carried him forward while his arm remained fixed, creating a leverage point that forced him to his knees to avoid the pain of resistance. "Stop," Maya said quietly, maintaining the hold with minimal pressure. "You don't need to get hurt." Luke struggled briefly before realizing that each movement only increased his discomfort. He stopped, his face flushed with a mixture of pain and humiliation. Maya released him carefully, stepping back into a neutral stance, her hands open at her sides in a non-threatening posture. Her breathing remained calm, her movements economical, nothing wasted, nothing excessive. The silence that followed was profound. Ashley stood frozen, her carefully constructed world visibly crumbling around her. The fear in her eyes was no longer hidden beneath layers of arrogance. It was raw, exposed, and unmistakable. What are you?" she whispered, the question escaping before she could stop it. Maya looked at her steadily. Just someone who wanted to be left alone. The simple truth of that statement hung in the air. Around them, students were already backing away, phones raised to capture the historic dismantling of Brooklyn High's established order. Brianna and Courtney exchanged panicked glances, their loyalty to Ashley suddenly in competition with their instinct for self-preservation. Ashley, desperate to salvage something from the wreckage of her authority, lunged forward with an incoherent cry. Not a calculated attack, but the last desperate act of someone watching their power evaporate. Maya sidestepped again, caught Ashley's arm, and used a gentle controlling technique to halt her momentum without causing pain. For a brief moment, their faces were inches apart, and Maya spoke so only Ashley could hear. "This ends now. Not because I'm stronger, but because this never had to happen at all." She released Ashley carefully, making sure she was stable before stepping back. Ashley staggered slightly, her face a mask of conflicting emotions, humiliation, fear, and beneath it all, a dawning recognition that everything had changed. Without another word, Maya picked up her backpack from where she'd set it down and walked away from the scene. The crowd parted for her, not out of the conditioned fear they'd shown for Ashley, but with a new kind of respect tinged with awe. Behind her, she could hear the excited voices already beginning to spread the story throughout the school's social networks. By tomorrow morning, everyone would know what had happened behind the gym. The carefully constructed hierarchy of Brooklyn High had been irrevocably altered in less than 5 minutes. Maya walked home slowly, the adrenaline gradually fading from her system. She felt no triumph, no satisfaction, only a weary relief that it was over, mixed with concern about whether she had kept her promise to her father. She hadn't lost control, hadn't hurt anyone, had used only the minimum force necessary. But she had engaged in a confrontation she had spent months trying to avoid. When she reached the small house at the end of the quiet street, her father was waiting on the porch. One look at his face told Maya he already sensed something had happened. Marcus Johnson was a powerfully built man with gentle eyes that belied his former career as a professional fighter. He stood as Maya approached, his expression a mixture of concern and inquiry. "It's done," Maya said simply as she climbed the steps. Her father nodded slowly. "Anyone hurt?" "No, just pride." Marcus gestured to the porch swing, and they sat together in silence for a moment before he spoke again. "Tell me everything." Maya recounted the events methodically, from the note on her locker to the final confrontation, omitting nothing. Her father listened without interruption, his expression thoughtful. When she finished, Maya looked down at her hands. "I broke my promise. I said I wouldn't fight again." Marcus shook his head gently. "No, Maya. You promised you wouldn't lose control again. That's not the same thing." He turned to face her fully. "What happened in Chicago was different. You lost yourself to anger. Today, you remained in complete control. You protected yourself without excessive force, without giving in to emotion." "But I still had to fight," Maya said quietly. "Sometimes standing your ground is the only path to peace," her father replied. "I taught you martial arts not just to defend your body, but to protect your spirit, to know when to act and when to endure." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'm proud of how you handled this, Maya." "What happens now?" she asked, the question encompassing far more than just the next day at school. Marcus smiled slightly. "Now you go forward, not as someone hiding in the shadows, afraid of her own strength, but as someone who understands her power and uses it responsibly." He squeezed her shoulder gently. "The hardest battles aren't fought with fists, Maya. They're fought within ourselves. The battle to remain true to who we are even when the world tries to make us something else." Maya nodded slowly, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. Not just the immediate burden of Ashley's bullying, but the heavier weight of guilt and fear she had carried since Chicago. For the first time in years, she felt fully herself, neither hiding from her strength nor defined by it. As the evening settled around them, father and daughter sat in companionable silence, watching the neighborhood children play in the fading light. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but Maya would face them standing tall, no longer afraid of her own shadow. The next morning, Brooklyn High School felt like a different world. Maya sensed the change the moment she stepped off the bus. The usual morning chaos continued, students rushing to lockers, finishing last-minute homework, gossiping in tight clusters, but beneath the familiar rhythms pulsed a new current of energy, and all of it seemed centered around her. Students who had never acknowledged her existence now watched her pass with wide eyes. Some nodded respectfully, others quickly looked away when she met their gaze. A few even smiled, tentative, uncertain gestures that nonetheless represented a seismic shift in the school's social tectonics. Maya kept her pace steady, her expression neutral. She had come to school prepared for consequences, perhaps a summons to the principal's office, maybe even suspension. What she hadn't expected was this strange new deference, this mixture of awe and curiosity that followed her through the hallways. "That's her," she heard someone whisper as she passed. She took down Zach Mitchell with one move, like literally flipped him. "I heard she's a black belt or something. My cousin said she trains with MMA fighters in Chicago." The rumors were already evolving, growing more elaborate with each retelling. Maya suppressed a sigh. This wasn't what she had wanted either, to become a spectacle, a subject of exaggerated stories. She had only wanted to be left alone. As Maya approached her locker, she spotted a familiar figure leaning against the wall nearby. Zach Mitchell stood alone, without his usual entourage, his Letterman jacket hanging loosely from his broad shoulders. His posture lacked its usual swagger, and when he saw Maya, he straightened up with visible nervousness. Maya tensed instinctively, preparing for confrontation, but Zach raised his hands in a placating gesture. "I'm not looking for trouble," he said quickly. I wanted to talk to you." Maya stopped a few feet away, her expression cautious but not hostile. "Okay." Zach shifted uncomfortably, glancing around to see who might be watching. "What you did yesterday, that was impressive. I've been playing football since I was 8. Nobody's ever put me down like that. It wasn't quite an apology, but something in his tone suggested a genuine reassessment. Maya remained silent, waiting. Look, Zach continued, lowering his voice. I want you to know that the stuff with Ashley, I shouldn't have gone along with it. He hesitated. It's complicated with her. She's my sister, and she's going through some stuff. That doesn't make it okay, Maya said quietly. I know, Zach admitted, surprising her with his candor. I don't know. It was easier to go along with it than to stand up to her. He met Maya's eyes directly for the first time. You're the first person who's ever really stood up to her. Maya considered him for a moment. Is that all you wanted to say? Zach shook his head. No, I wanted to say I'm sorry. For the gym class stuff, for yesterday, for all of it. It was messed up, and I knew it was messed up, and I did it anyway. The apology was unexpected, and Maya found herself momentarily at a loss for words. Finally, she nodded. Thank you for saying that. Are we cool? Zach asked hesitantly. We're not enemies, Maya replied carefully. The rest depends on what happens next. Zach nodded, accepting the measured response. He pushed himself away from the wall. Fair enough. I'll see you around, Maya. As he walked away, Maya noticed several students watching the exchange with undisguised interest. The conversation would be dissected and analyzed throughout the day, she knew. Another piece of the evolving narrative that was rapidly rewriting Brooklyn High's social landscape. Maya turned to her locker, relieved to find it free of graffiti for the first time in weeks. As she dialed her combination, she felt rather than saw someone approach from behind. Quite the celebrity now, aren't you? Maya turned to find Luke Rodriguez standing there, his usual smirk replaced by something more complex. Resentment mingled with reluctant respect. I'm not interested in being a celebrity, Maya replied evenly. Luke leaned against the adjacent locker. Well, too bad because that's what you are. You know they're calling you the Quiet Storm now. He snorted. Social media is blowing up with videos from yesterday. You're trending. Maya felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Videos? Yeah, like a dozen different angles. Luke studied her reaction with interest. You didn't think people wouldn't record it, did you? That's gold content right there. Queen Bee gets dethroned by the new girl. He tilted his head. You really don't care about any of this, do you? No, Maya said simply. I don't. Luke shook his head, genuinely perplexed. That's what I don't get about you. Most people would be milking this for all it's worth. You take down the school's biggest bully and her quarterback brother in under a minute, and you act like it's nothing. It is nothing, Maya said, closing her locker. It solved nothing. It changed nothing that matters. Are you kidding? It changed everything. Luke gestured around the hallway. Look at this place. Yesterday, everyone walked on eggshells around Ashley. Today, they're all waiting to see what you'll do next. Maya shouldered her backpack. Then, they'll be disappointed. There is no next. She started to walk away, then paused. And Luke? I'm not interested in taking Ashley's place. That's not why I did what I did. Luke watched her go, his expression thoughtful. Unlike Zach, he hadn't apologized, perhaps couldn't bring himself to, but something in his demeanor had shifted nonetheless. The casual cruelty that had defined him seemed temporarily displaced by genuine curiosity. Throughout the morning classes, Maya felt the school's attention like a physical weight. Teachers gave her speculative glances, but said nothing. Either they hadn't heard about the incident, or more likely, they were choosing not to acknowledge unsanctioned activities that had occurred off school grounds after hours. It wasn't until lunchtime that Maya finally encountered Ashley. The cafeteria fell into a hush as Maya entered, conversations pausing mid-sentence as students turned to watch her progress through the room. Maya kept her eyes forward, ignoring the attention as she made her way to her usual isolated table. Ashley sat alone at her customary central table, the throne from which she had ruled Brooklyn High's social kingdom. But today, the court had abandoned her. Brianna and Courtney sat several tables away, heads together in whispered conversation. The usual satellites of popular students who typically orbited Ashley's table had dispersed throughout the cafeteria, carefully avoiding her vicinity. The isolation was so complete, so obvious, that Maya felt an unexpected pang of empathy. She knew what it was to be alone in a crowded room, to feel the weight of eyes watching while no one approached. Ashley stared down at her untouched lunch, her shoulders rigid with the effort of maintaining her composure. The confident posture remained, but it now seemed brittle, a fragile facade covering something vulnerable beneath. Maya hesitated, then made a decision that surprised even herself. Instead of heading to her corner table, she walked directly to where Ashley sat alone. The cafeteria fell silent as students realized what was happening, all pretense of disinterest abandoned as they watched the unfolding drama. Ashley looked up as Maya's shadow fell across her table, her expression instantly hardening into defensive hostility. "What do you want?" "Come to gloat." Maya set her tray down and took a seat across from Ashley. "No." Ashley's eyes narrowed with suspicion. "Then what?" "Everyone's watching, you know. Is this your victory lap? Showing everyone how magnanimous you are to the fallen queen?" "I just thought no one should have to eat alone," Maya said quietly. The simple statement seemed to catch Ashley off guard. She stared at Maya, searching for hidden motives, for the trap or trick that must be lurking beneath the surface. Finding none, her composure faltered momentarily. "I don't need your pity," she said, but the words lacked their usual venom. "It's not pity," Maya replied. "It's a choice. Yesterday is over. We can keep fighting, or we can stop. I prefer to stop." Ashley looked around the cafeteria, acutely aware of the dozens of eyes watching their interaction, the phones discreetly raised to capture whatever happened next. Her empire had crumbled overnight, her carefully constructed identity as Brooklyn High's untouchable queen shattered beyond repair. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You won. You humiliated me in front of everyone. What more do you want?" "I never wanted any of this," Maya said. "Not the fight, not the attention, none of it. I just wanted to be left alone." "Then why sit here now?" Ashley demanded. "Why not go back to your corner and be invisible?" Maya considered the question carefully. "Because maybe we both needed to be seen. Really seen, not just as what others think we are." Something shifted in Ashley's expression, a momentary glimpse behind the armor she had worn for so long. For a brief instant, Maya saw not the cruel, confident bully, but a girl as lost and uncertain as anyone else, perhaps more so now that her carefully constructed identity had been stripped away. The moment passed quickly, Ashley's defenses reasserting themselves. But something had changed, however slightly. "This doesn't make us friends," Ashley said, the statement half warning, half question. "No," Maya agreed. "But maybe it means we don't have to be enemies." They ate in silence after that, an uneasy truce established under the watchful eyes of the entire cafeteria. When the bell rang, they went their separate ways without another word, but the symbolic significance of what had transpired wasn't lost on anyone who had witnessed it. By the end of the day, a new narrative had taken shape at Brooklyn High, not just about Maya's unexpected display of martial prowess, but about the moment in the cafeteria when she had chosen reconciliation over triumph. The story evolved, as stories do, taking on meanings and morals that extended beyond the simple facts. As Maya boarded the bus home, she overheard a freshman explaining to his friend, it wasn't about who was stronger. It was about breaking the cycle. Maya smiled slightly to herself as she took her seat. Perhaps something good had come from the confrontation after all. Not just an end to her own troubles, but a small crack in the foundation of a system that had hurt so many others before her. The bus pulled away from Brooklyn High, and Maya watched the school recede through the window. For the first time since arriving, she felt neither dread nor anxiety about returning tomorrow. Whatever came next, she would face it as herself, no longer hiding, no longer afraid of her own strength. As her father had said, the hardest battles weren't fought with fists. And perhaps the most important victories weren't about defeating others, but about finding the courage to be fully, unapologetically oneself in a world that constantly demanded conformity. Maya leaned her head against the cool glass of the window, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. Brooklyn High would never be the same, and neither would she. 2 weeks later, Brooklyn High settled into a new equilibrium. The initial shock of Ashley's dethroning had given way to a more subtle redistribution of social power throughout the school. Like water finding its natural level, students began forming more fluid, less hierarchical connections. The rigid caste system that had defined the school for years gradually softened around the edges. Maya noticed the changes with quiet satisfaction as she walked through the morning hallway. Groups that had once been strictly segregated now mingled more freely. Conversation seemed more genuine, less performative. Even the atmosphere felt lighter, as if a collective tension had been released. "Morning, Maya," called a junior girl Maya recognized from her history class. "Morning," Maya replied with a small smile. These casual greetings had become commonplace. Maya was no longer invisible, but she hadn't become the school's new queen either, precisely as she'd wanted. Instead, she occupied a unique position, respected but not feared, acknowledged but not obsessively watched. After the initial flurry of attention, most students had accepted her preference for quieter interactions. At her locker, Maya found a folded note slipped through the ventilation slots. She opened it cautiously, still half expecting some delayed retaliation. "Martial Arts Club meeting today after school. Room 136. No experience needed. All welcome." Below the typed announcement, someone had handwritten, "We could use someone with your expertise. Consider it, Mr. Reeves?" Maya smiled slightly. Mr. Reeves, the physics teacher who moonlighted as the school's martial arts club advisor, had approached her last week about joining. She'd been hesitant, unsure about drawing more attention to her skills, but her father had encouraged her to consider it. "Hiding your light doesn't serve anyone," he'd told her. "Least of all yourself." Maya tucked the note into her pocket, still undecided but leaning toward attending. As she closed her locker, she spotted Ashley walking alone down the hallway. The former queen of Brooklyn High had undergone her own transformation. Gone was the performative swagger, the entourage, the carefully cultivated aura of untouchability. Ashley walked with her head up, but her shoulders relaxed, her designer clothes replaced by simpler attire. The change wasn't just external. Something in her eyes had shifted too, a newfound awareness that seemed to temper her interactions with others. Their gazes met briefly across the hallway. Ashley gave a small, almost imperceptible nod before continuing on her way. It wasn't friendship, not even close, but it was acknowledgement, a mutual recognition that transcended their former conflict. Maya had heard through the school grapevine that Ashley had joined the yearbook committee, throwing herself into photography with unexpected passion. Apparently, she had a genuine talent for capturing candid moments, for seeing beauty in unexpected places. It was as if, freed from the exhausting work of maintaining her social throne, Ashley had finally found space to discover who she actually was. The transformation is kind of amazing, isn't it? Maya turned to find Elena, a quiet girl from her English class, standing nearby. They had started sitting together recently, forming a tentative friendship based on shared interests in literature and art. "Ashley?" Maya asked. Elena nodded. "She took some photos for the literary magazine yesterday. They're actually really good." She adjusted her glasses thoughtfully. It's like watching someone wake up from a long sleep. Maya considered this. "I think maybe we all were sleeping a little deep," Elena teased, but her smile was warm. "Anyway, are you coming to study group this afternoon? We're tackling the Gatsby analysis. I might stop by the martial arts club meeting first," Maya said, surprising herself at the decision. Elena's eyebrows rose. "Really? That's great. I've been thinking about checking it out too, but I wasn't sure if it was for beginners." "The note said all experience levels welcome," Maya replied. "We could go together." "Deal," Elena said with a grin. The bell rang, and she started backing toward her class. "See you at lunch?" Maya nodded, watching as Elena disappeared into the stream of students. These small connections, genuine, unforced, based on mutual interests rather than social positioning, represented everything she had hoped to find at Brooklyn High but had initially despaired of discovering. As Maya headed to her first class, she passed a trophy case where Zach Mitchell's football achievements were prominently displayed. Zach himself stood there, talking with a younger student Maya recognized as a freshman who had recently joined the team. It's all about balance and leverage, Zach was saying, demonstrating his stance. Strength matters, but technique matters more. Maya taught me that. He caught sight of her and waved, not embarrassed to be overheard. Hey, Maya, tell Ryan about that foot sweep you used. He doesn't believe it works on someone my size. Maya approached cautiously, still not entirely comfortable with her newfound notoriety. It's all physics, she explained to the wide-eyed freshman. The bigger someone is, the harder they fall if you find the right pivot point. Could you show us some time? Zach asked. Coach has been talking about incorporating some martial arts training for balance and coordination. Maybe, Maya said, surprised by her own willingness to consider it. I'll think about it. Zach nodded, accepting her tentative response without pushing. His own transformation had been among the most noticeable at Brooklyn High. Freed from his role as Ashley's enforcer, he had emerged as a more thoughtful leader on the football team, his natural charisma now channeled toward mentorship rather than intimidation. Even Luke Rodriguez had found a more constructive outlet for his energy, redirecting his talent for stirring trouble into revitalizing the school's debate team. His sharp tongue and quick thinking made him a formidable opponent in structured arguments, and he seemed to thrive on the intellectual challenge. As for Brianna and Courtney, they had drifted apart from Ashley, but hadn't formed a new clique. Instead, they seemed to be developing individual interests, Brianna in the drama department, Courtney in student government. The dissolution of their trio had revealed three distinct individuals who were slowly discovering their own paths. Lunchtime in the cafeteria, once the most visible stage for Brooklyn High's social hierarchy, now reflected the school's broader transformation. The rigid territorial boundaries had blurred, with students moving more freely between tables. Conversations flowed across formerly impenetrable social barriers. Even the noise level had changed, the performative loudness replaced by a more genuine hum of interaction. Maya sat with Elena and a small group of students who shared their literature class, discussing their different interpretations of Gatsby's character. The conversation was animated but thoughtful, everyone's perspective welcomed and considered. He was obsessed with the past, Maya offered. Try to recreate something that never really existed the way he remembered it. Isn't that what we all do sometimes? Asked David, a quiet boy who rarely spoke in class. Build up these perfect versions of what we want and miss what's actually in front of us. The group considered this, the conversation deepening beyond the assignment's requirements. Maya glanced around the cafeteria, taking in the similar scenes playing out at other tables. Students engaged in genuine exchange rather than social performance. Her gaze paused briefly on Ashley, who sat with members of the yearbook committee, her camera on the table beside her lunch. Ashley was listening intently to something the committee's editor was explaining, her expression focused and engaged in a way Maya had never seen during her reign as the school's queen. As if sensing Maya's attention, Ashley looked up. Their eyes met across the cafeteria, and this time, Ashley offered a small but genuine smile before returning to her conversation. Maya felt a sense of completion, of a circle closing. What had begun as a power struggle had transformed into something neither of them could have anticipated, a catalyst for growth, for both of them and for Brooklyn High as a whole. After school, Maya found herself standing outside room 136, hesitating at the threshold of the martial arts club meeting. Through the window on the door, she could see about 15 students of various grades sitting on mats, listening to Mr. Reeves explain a basic wrist escape technique. Elena appeared beside her, slightly out of breath. Sorry I'm late. Ms. Patel wanted to talk about my essay. She peered through the window. Looks like they're just getting started. Maya took a deep breath. I'm still not sure about this. Because you don't want to show off? Elena guessed shrewdly. Something like that, Maya admitted. I've spent so long trying not to stand out. Elena considered this. Maybe standing out isn't the problem. Maybe it's about standing out for the right reasons. She gestured toward the door. Teaching others what you know, that's different from using it to dominate, right? The insight struck Maya forcefully. All these years, she had equated visibility with vulnerability, had sought safety in shadows. But perhaps true strength lay not in hiding her light, but in using it to illuminate a path for others. "You're pretty wise for someone who claims to be failing philosophy," Maya said with a small smile. Elena grinned. "I contain multitudes. Now, are we going in or what?" Maya pushed open the door. The conversation inside paused as heads turned toward the newcomers. Mr. Reeves's face lit up with recognition and welcome. "Maya, Elena, perfect timing. We were just discussing the principles of balance and leverage." He gestured them forward. "Maya, I believe you might have some insights to share on this topic." For a brief moment, Maya felt the old instinct to deflect attention, to minimize her knowledge and experience. But she looked around at the genuinely curious faces, at Elena's encouraging smile, and made a different choice. "I'd be happy to help," she said, stepping forward onto the mat. As Maya demonstrated a simple technique, carefully explaining each movement and its purpose, she felt a sense of rightness, of pieces falling into place. This was not the attention she had feared, not scrutiny or judgment, but connection, the sharing of something valuable she had to offer. Later, walking home in the golden afternoon light, Maya pulled out her phone and called her father. "Hey, Dad," she said when he answered. "I joined the martial arts club today." "That's wonderful, Maya," Marcus replied, his voice warm with pride. "How did it feel?" Maya considered the question, watching a group of younger children playing basketball in a driveway she passed. "It felt right," she said finally, "like I was finally using what you taught me the way it was meant to be used." "That's all I ever wanted for you," her father said softly. "Not just the techniques, but the wisdom to know when and how to share them." They talked for a few more minutes about the details of the club, about the techniques she had demonstrated. As Maya approached their house, she saw her father step out onto the porch, phone still at his ear, waving to her with his free hand. She ended the call and jogged the last few steps, meeting him with a hug that conveyed everything words couldn't: gratitude, love, and the profound relief of finally being at peace with all aspects of herself. "I'm proud of you, Maya," Marcus said, his strong arms gentle around her shoulders. "Not because of what happened with Ashley, but because of what happened after, the choice to heal rather than hurt, to build rather than break." Maya nodded against his shoulder, understanding completely. The true test of strength had never been the confrontation behind the gym. It had been every moment since. The daily choices to use her power with wisdom and compassion to help create a community rather than dominate it. That evening, as Maya sat on her bed finishing her homework, her phone buzzed with a notification. She picked it up to find a message request from an unexpected sender. Ashley Mitchell. For a moment, Maya hesitated, unsure whether opening this door was wise. Then, remembering the small smile in the cafeteria, she accepted the request. The message was simple. "There's a photography exhibition downtown this weekend. The yearbook staff is going. You and Elena might find it interesting." It wasn't an apology. It wasn't even really a friendship overture. But it was acknowledgement, a small bridge extended across the divide that had once seemed unbridgeable. Maya typed a reply carefully. "Thanks for letting us know. We might check it out." She set her phone down, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Brooklyn High would never return to what it had been before she arrived. The rigid hierarchy had been broken, not just by her stand against Ashley, but by everyone who had seized the opportunity to reimagine what their community could be. The quiet new girl from Chicago had never intended to change anything. She had only wanted to be left alone, to blend invisibly into the background until graduation. Instead, she had become a catalyst for transformation, not by seeking power, but by demonstrating what true strength looked like. As Maya turned back to her homework, she felt a deep sense of contentment. The path ahead was not without challenges, but for the first time in years, she was walking it as her complete self, strong and gentle, powerful and compassionate, visible and at peace. The true victory hadn't been defeating Ashley Mitchell. It had been freeing Maya Johnson.